I am physically incapable of shutting up about Kichikuou Rance. Okay, well, that's cool and all, but what exactly is it? For those unaware, the Rance series is a long-running series of edoge titles with 10 mainline games, as well as receiving spin-offs and remakes of some earlier entries. With the first ever game being released in 1989, and the final mainline game, Rance 10, being released in 2018, this means it had a runtime of almost 30 years. While you might have heard of Rance previously due to its, obviously very questionable content, what you might not be aware of is that this series is loved for much more than just that. What these games have to offer is some really great storytelling and some fantastic character writing, with character development overarching from entry to entry, which is really enjoyable to experience. The world building is also one of the strongest aspects of the series, the whole setting becoming so interesting and fascinating to learn more about. Of course, there are other aspects I very much enjoy too, such as the top-notch humor and banger OSTs too. Now that we all know what the Rance series entails, what is Kichikuou Rance exactly? Kichikuou Rance was the 7th Rance game Alisoft created, and was made as a what-if type of conclusion for the series up to that point. Sometime after Rance 4, Alisoft was dangerously close to going bankrupt, and so decided to create a game that would contain all of their ideas that hadn't yet come into fruition, and be a satisfying ending for the franchise. Well, it ended up that Kichikuou Rance would become a complete hit with both edoge fans and even non-edoge fans alike, which resulted in saving the company and allowing them to continue making games for the franchise, standing as the top-selling edoge for many years after its release. As for what the gameplay is, it's something akin to a grand-scale RPG or strategy game, such as Romance of the Three Kingdoms. Kichikuou Rance takes place on a big overworld map, and you're able to interact with all different cities and locations in various ways, such as being able to levy and obtain money from cities under your own control, interact with and explore certain buildings or dungeons within these cities, manage your own castle or base and create buildings in it, as well as attack bordering cities which are under opposing rule. When you initiate combat with a bordering city, you're able to select up to 4 units, with the first 2 units being placed in the front and your last 2 being placed in the back. While there's no inherent class type system, characters are usually split into either being purely melee and say front on their description, back to represent being a ranged unit such as an archer or mage, and some list front and back, which means they could provide utility or attack in both placements. While mages are able to attack in a front position, this leads them to be more vulnerable, as both melee and ranged attacks can hit units in the front, while only ranged attacks can hit units in the back. This is obviously a problem, as they are generally more squishy or frail than dedicated melee characters. These battles have a limit of 5 rounds, and if you reach the turn limit, whoever is considered the defender will win the battle. There's a decent amount of nuance to these battles, and honestly the game as a whole, but I don't want to spend too much more time on this. So my TLDR is the goal of the game is to manage your money, troops, and so on, and have Rance take over the world. Okay, so now that we're all caught up on what Kichikuou Rance is, let's now finally go into more detail about why I absolutely adore this game. One thing you may hear about in some other various RPGs are complaints of your choices don't matter, or don't have as much of an impact as you would want. Well, I'm happy to announce that Kichikuou Rance does not share this trait. Throughout the game, your decisions can, and will, change how the game goes dramatically. For instance, one of the cities in Lazes contains an association which does, let's just say very shady business. When you send Rance towards this building, you are given 2 prompts. Whether you want to allow the business to stay standing, having access to a portion of the funds when you visit, as well as having access to their belongings, or whether you want to kill off the boss and have it no longer around. I find this to be very interesting, as it provides an interesting dilemma from a moral and gameplay perspective. Having access to more funds is a pretty good benefit, and if you do let them live, you're actually able to help and provide a happy ending to a character from this organization, which is honestly pretty impactful. However, on the flip side, allowing the boss to live and letting them stay means you're basically consenting to allow their shady things to continue on in the world. And this association staying around can lead to certain characters ending up with their worst ending, due to them being kidnapped or captured in some way. There are lots, and I mean lots, of instances like this throughout the game, and needless to say, I think it's really cool. There is a ton of content to experience because of how many different choices like this you can go through. And of course, earlier choices you make will impact later events, such as who you can recruit or save. To continue along with this, to go along with all the differing choices and how your actions will have consequences, is how it is completely impossible to obtain and save every possible character, playable and unplayable, and also receive everyone's best ending in one single playthrough. Of course, you can find the concept of if you recruit X, you can't recruit Y in other games, such as Fire Emblem, but I haven't experienced anything quite like the scale of this game here. Oftentimes, choosing to not recruit or save as certain characters will lead you to see bad shit happening to them, which can feel super shitty. Then, later in the stories, certain characters can be negatively affected by who you chose in that instance, which can just bring up those same shitty feelings again. Then, even ignoring trying to collect every character, there are times where receiving one character's best ending can directly lead to another character's worst ending. To continue along the topic of character endings, while I'm sure you would expect you control the fates of playable characters, you also determine the fate of a lot, and I mean a lot, of NPCs as well. They can get pretty fucked up and emotional as well. I ended up coming across a lot of bad ends for various NPCs throughout my playthrough, and plenty of them had me feel super horrible. Also, one thing that I think is especially neat is how just because a character is playable, it doesn't grant them some sort of magical invincibility to a shitty fate in the story. There's plenty of events throughout the story which targets characters under your control. And while you're able to prevent some of these instances, there's also a ton which you might be completely unable to prevent, and thus lose some characters who you might really enjoy. Plus, to add into the already horrible feeling of losing characters, depending on who dies, certain characters who are still alive will react to the losses of people they care about, or even completely leave the army altogether. A feeling this game does really well is truly making it feel like the world is at war. Not everyone gets to be happy at the end, no one is completely immune to all the terrible shit going on, and not just your own army is impacted by your own actions, but everyone else in your nation is too. For other aspects of this game I really enjoy, I would like to comment that the world building and shit it introduces to the Rance franchise is super interesting. This game introduces plenty of new nations and areas with their own set of rulers and shit going on, as well as continuing plot points and character stories from previous locations in Rance 1 through 4 as well. It also fully introduces the demon race, which is a super fucking cool concept and has plenty of super interesting characters within it. Seeing all the different events going on in the different kingdoms is super interesting. There's of course drama going on with all the nobles and such, but even plenty of random towns have different events going on too, and characters to meet. And you're able to come across lots of neat landmarks and locations, which allows for the world to feel super complete. As I'm sure you could guess, this game also features a lot of different endings. But what I really enjoy is that for the most part, these endings aren't just one-off silly haha you lose endings, but ones that are pretty damn impactful and are definitely worth experiencing, as painful as it may be to obtain some of them. I briefly want to touch upon the fact that this game is just visually fantastic. While I think it is a bit of a bummer that most characters don't have more portraits to show more expressions, all the CGs in this game are so good. Plenty of moments felt so much more impactful thanks to the amazing art for the CGs. Not to mention the portraits and character designs for almost every single character are pretty peak. And to go along with the gorgeous art style, the music is equally just as great. While I do think that a lot of the songs do become more impactful once you play through the game and experience the moments that go alongside them, I do think that the OST is still super sick. It really goes alongside the vibe of the game perfectly, and amplifies it even more. The last thing I want to touch on is, while I'm purposefully naming and discussing specific character moments because obviously spoilers, what I would like to say is that Rance as a character really grows and shines throughout this game, and his character writing is easily one of the biggest highlights for me. I, of course, already loved him throughout the previous entries, but the amount of depth and fantastic moments this game brings him is honestly insane, and easily solidified him as one of the best characters I've ever experienced. While it's impossible to go into absolutely every reason of why I love this game so much due to spoilers and whatnot, I hope that this video here helped maybe paint some of a picture of why this game has lived rent-free ever since I finished it, and maybe even spark some interest in you to try out the Rance series as well. While I'm nowhere near completing it, I very much adore this series already, and seeing people inspired to try it because of my shilling makes me really happy. Also, for the record, while I did want to show Kichikuou in particular, I want to stress that you shouldn't just skip all the other Rance games for this one, as the journey up to here is what makes it so great, and it completely builds on the pre-established character writing and locations. If you have interest in trying out the older games, the original Rance 1 all the way to Rance 4.2 are considered freeware and translated. In regards to the remakes of the first two games, 01 and 02, you can purchase both of them from Manga Gamer. And while the remake Rance 03 isn't translated yet, as it's currently a work in progress, I wouldn't recommend letting that stop you from trying out these games, as I think the original Rance 3 is plenty solid and really enjoyable too. And you can beat my video like, ahaha. For those who have watched my previous fans videos so far, I would like to say that a video talking about the game with full-on spoilers and all the big details is still in the works. This isn't a replacement for that or anything. I just really want to put out a nice and short spoiler-free video so I could show this game and series to everyone, even if someone hadn't heard of Rance previously. Well, I guess that's it. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you around!